Multiple hazards are set to affect the lower 48 today and tonight. Life-threatening flash flooding and severe thunderstorms with strong damaging winds and tornadoes are possible over the next 24 hours. I'll show you when and where. Plus, we'll take a look at the growing possibility of a major East Coast winter storm next week. So grab a cup of coffee and strap in. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason Pritchard, your host, and you're here for another fun-filled, action-packed, exciting edition of Cold Rain's Weather World, where we talk about the current weather and the upcoming weather, and maybe a few other things in between. So if you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. I'm so glad that you're here. The goal of this channel is to inform you about upcoming weather so that you leave the show feeling up to date on the current weather threats that are out there and what's coming over the next few days to a couple of weeks, and that you maybe even learn a few things along the way. But most importantly, we're going to have fun and enjoy ourselves. Now, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel. It's fast, it's easy, it only takes one click. And if you like what you see, hit the like button down below and share the content with friends and family. That will help us grow the community. And also leave a comment in the comment section. It could be a question for me or about me. It could be a suggestion for the show or a question about the weather. Even more importantly than that, though, if there's something that we could pray about as a community or I could pray about for you, I'd love to do that. If you're going through a difficult time, the goal of this, one of the goals of this channel is to build a community and support each other and encourage each other and engage with each other. And so I'd really like to do that. And so if there's an issue that we can pray over, would love for you to list that in the comments section. So I really appreciate that. Any engagement that you have with the channel or the video helps the channel to grow. It helps YouTube and the algorithm to push this channel out to more people so we can grow our audience and our community. So with that, we've got a lot on the docket to talk about today. We've got a flash flooding threat, an excessive rain threat unfolding currently over parts of Tennessee and into Kentucky. And we've also got a severe threat that's going to shape up this afternoon over the Mississippi Valley and lower south or the deep south. So we've got tornadoes possible, heavy rain, high winds. All of that is set to affect portions of the South. And then next week, we have the potential for a big East Coast winter storm. I've been talking about this on Twitter for about 10 days. The pattern has been very active. It's shaping up to be one of those patterns where you could get a pretty sizable winter storm with lots of cold air, lots of snow, lots of ice, and one of those situations where it may be a storm that you remember for a while. So we're going to take a look at all of that. Before we dive in, though, we're going to start with our trivia question of the day, okay? So this is one that some of you may know and some of you may not know, but we're going to start with this and see how it goes. So, what is the term for a rapidly intensifying tropical cyclone? Is it A, explosive deepening, B, bombogenesis, C, cyclonic acceleration, or D, typhoon booster? That sounds fun. So we'll have the answer at the end of the show. Type the answer in the comment section if you think you know it, or just hold it in your mind and we'll see if you're right. Okay, so with that, let's get on into the flooding threat here. So we're gonna switch our view so that we can center this on the page. As we go through the show, there are different sites that I use, and some of the sites make good use of the space on the page and some do not. And some of the National Weather Service sites have lots of blank space. I don't know that they're formatted the best at times. But anyway, we'll take a look here. So this is our current surface map. We're going to start here. And you can see sort of a broad area of low pressure taking shape here over Kansas. Now, what's going to happen here is this is going to develop into a strong low pressure. It's going to move on off toward the Ohio Valley and up into the Northeast, and it's going to drag a cold front through the South. That's going to be the impetus for creating lift for strong storms as we work through the afternoon into the evening and overnight hours. The stationary front also is sitting here sort of through Missouri into Kentucky, over across into northern Virginia. And along this boundary, we're seeing lots of rain falling in this area. So this is a focal point for showers and storms that are developing here. Heavy rains are going to persist over this area, so we've got flash flood watches in effect, and we'll get into all of that. But that's the current surface map here. Now, if we take a look at our hazards map, and we'll go back over to a better view here. So we'll change the display and see that we've got winter weather advisories. The cold side of the storm is going to feature plenty of snow along these areas. These areas are going to set to pick up anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of snow. And then we've got winter storm warnings for heavier amounts up here in the northeast. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the snow threat here. The heavier snow definitely is going to fall up in this area, 6+ inches of snow. We're going to have some glazing as well on top of this. So you folks up in the northeast, prepare for some winter weather, but in the meantime, flood warnings are out all over the place here. As you can see, river flood warnings, flash flood warnings, flood advisories, and then flood watches are in effect for a large area where excessive rain could fall. Now, if we take a look at our first threat of the day, we're gonna really drill in here on the severe weather threat across the Mississippi Valley and the southeast. Now, what you see here on the National Weather Service page, and we'll flip back over to a better view, is that this is a Storm Prediction Center page, by the way. And so we see a large enhanced risk. Now, we've been watching this. This started with a slight risk, then we had an enhanced risk. Now this has expanded even further. And so we've got several threats that are at play here. We've got a tornado threat, a fairly large tornado threat here with 10% hatch. This is a pretty big area, folks. And so 10% probability of a tornado at any given point within this area over the threat window. And we've got a wind threat as well. So we've got where you see this 30% area, we could see a higher threat for wind here. A strong low-level jet, we're going to take a look at this in a minute, but a strong low-level jet is going to form and it's going to translate across the southeast. It's going to work with instability to create a line of really strong and severe thunderstorms, and that's going to make use of that wind energy and pull that down to the surface. This black area is where we could see some significant gusts higher than 70 miles per hour. So from Mississippi on up into southwestern Tennessee, really under the gun here for strong winds. Now, what you're looking at here is instability. We call this CAPE in the meteorology world. It's convective available potential energy. There was a little note that I put on the video yesterday to define that, but it's essentially a measure of the instability in the atmosphere. And you can look at instability in a couple of different ways. We don't need to really get into it too much today, but take my word for it, there's going to be plenty of instability across this area. Dew points into the 60s are surging in already ahead of the cold front that's taking shape. And as we go through the afternoon hours into the evening, you can see here, I'll roll this back so you can see how this comes in. But rich moisture is coming out of the Gulf. There's plenty of moisture to work with. Cape, the instability is surging in. And so you can see we get up into the 1,500, 1,600 range here. That's pretty good instability. Plus, there's a lot of turning with height, a lot of what we call wind shear. Wind is increasing with height, so you have speed shear, and you have rotational shear, where directional shear, where the wind is actually turning as you go up into the atmosphere. That sets the stage for spin. So rotating updrafts, these thunderstorms suck up the rich moisture and use the instability to grow. And then the turning of the winds with height enables the thunderstorm to spin. And as they spin, they can stretch out that air column and bring that down to the ground, and you get tornadoes. And that's how we do that. So that's a little bit of a quick lesson on tornadoes. We'll call that a freebie. All right. So we're going to roll this on forward. And as you can see, as we get into the evening hours, that cape or that instability starts to wane over time, and then the threat of widespread severe weather should diminish as that line works on off to the east. And we'll take a look at a composite radar prediction in a few minutes, and then we'll be able to see how the line comes through. But I wanted to show you, before we do that, let me throw my phone over there so it doesn't make noise the whole entire time. Before we do that, take a look here. This is the NAM3K's interpretation of low-level winds. These winds are at 850 millibars, about 5,000 feet off the ground. If we look a little lower in the atmosphere, around 925 millibars, we'll see a strong wind field there as well. But we're just going to show this one today. So as we roll this on forward, about 9:10, so we're looking at about 7 o'clock tonight, you're really starting to see the severe threat take shape. And this jet has strengthened. So we're looking at values here, according to the NAM, in the 60s, 60 knot range. And this is strong winds, folks. This is really going to help fuel wind damage as this line takes shape. You can see this even increase further. So we'll roll this on forward through the course of the evening and overnight. That strong jet spreads into Georgia. Now, what's going to happen? The atmosphere is going to cool down, as of course, as it always does at night. And so you lose some of that instability. And as the instability wanes, the thunderstorms don't quite grow as it's not as easy for the thunderstorms to grow. Now they can still grow and they can still persist if you have forcing at the surface to push that air up, but the air is not as buoyant with less instability, so it's not going to be as easy to grow those tall thunderstorms. And so we expect the severe weather threat to wane overnight, but that jet still cranks up. And look at it here. As we go on forward, that low pressure is strengthening. It's creating a large wind field around it, strengthening the wind field, and you can see that it comes through North Carolina. We're looking at close to somewhere around 80 miles or 80 knots for the jet here. So what this tells us is that there is a potential, even though there's not a high risk of severe thunderstorms or widespread severe thunderstorms across eastern Georgia into the South and North Carolina into Virginia, there's still a threat there for high, damaging winds potentially with any storms that can persist. So there is a chance that the Storm Prediction Center may upgrade this area, but we'll just have to see how that threat plays out. Instability is definitely going to be a limiting factor. This is going to roll through here Saturday, so late tonight, early Sunday morning into maybe the early afternoon hours, and so the air mass is going to be a little bit cold, chillier, and it's not ideal timing. But in any event, there's going to be a strong wind field. So even outside of thunderstorms, you could gust 30 miles per hour, even gust 35, 40 miles per hour. So with any winds that come down with the thunderstorms, as I said, there's a lot of wind energy upstairs to work with. So we could have a little bit of a wind threat here. But even outside, the background wind field is going to be strong. You can see these isobars close together, particularly as you get up here across Indiana and Ohio. You can expect some stronger winds and on into the Northeast. So that's our low-level jet. We wanted to show that. Now, one other thing I wanted to show, excuse me, that illustrates the tornado threat a little bit more. This is called a sounding or a skew-T plot. There's a lot going on here. Ignore most of this. I showed this the other day and did not show it very well because it was off the page. But what we want to note here is a couple of things. This is a temperature profile of the atmosphere as you go up in the atmosphere. So just know this: height this way, higher in the atmosphere this way. And these little wind barbs here show you the direction of and speed of the wind that the model is predicting. This is the NAM, I'm sorry, this is the HRR. It's a very short range, high resolution model. And as you can see, we've got winds here out of the south. They turn out of the southwest and they go on and turn more up as we go in height, and they also increase in speed. That's a recipe for tornadoes, okay? And over here, this is called a hodograph. And this is another representation of that. But what this does is it just shows you how the winds turn as you go up into the atmosphere. And if you get these long looping sickle shell shaped hodographs, this tells you that there is a lot of spin and rotation in the lower part of the atmosphere, and thunderstorms that form, if they're strong, they can make use of this and create tornadoes. And it tells you down here in the box for quick and easy purposes, the threat hazard is tornado. Now, soundings are very useful. So I'll give you a quick and dirty on a sounding. This is very useful to understand the severe weather threat. It's also very useful to understand winter weather threats as well. You know, if you live in the south, the southeast, up into the mid-Atlantic, maybe even into the northeast, you pay attention to this too. We get a lot of icing events and mixed events, particularly in the southeast. I've lived here all my life, and most of our snowstorms tend to be, snow changing to some form of ice, changing to rain. And what dictates that oftentimes is warm air layers above the surface. It might be very cold at the surface, and then you get a warm air layer running in there. So these soundings do a good job of picking up on this. And we're going to look at one of these tomorrow. We're not going to do that today because there's a lot going on and I don't want to spend too much time on this. But just know that soundings and skew-T plots like this can show you good information when it comes to severe weather, help you to understand what type of severe weather threat you have, how much of a severe weather threat you have, and also what type of winter weather threat you have. So we're going to leave it there for today, but notice, just know that soundings all up and down. This is through Mississippi and Alabama have these long looping hodographs, so there's a tornado threat. So the bottom line is be aware, be weather aware as you go through the course of the evening and overnight hours. Unfortunately, through the evening, it's very difficult. And as you get into the nighttime, it's very difficult to be aware of the threat because you're sleeping. But have some way to be informed of that, and all of that. Now, this is the HRR. We're going to go ahead and flip off of that. We don't need to be on that anymore. Now we're going to go back to our other display and take a look at how the precipitation unfolds with this severe threat. So around 3, 4, 5 o'clock this evening, we're seeing this start to take shape here in Arkansas, spread into Louisiana, over into pretty much all of Mississippi. So look at this line. Right out ahead of this line, you'll see these little clusters of storms. There's a potential for some supercells to develop out ahead of the line. If they do, the threat on that's unclear right now how much of this activity we'll see. But definitely pay attention, because if we start to see supercells develop, they could really make use of the environment and spin up some strong tornadoes. Either way, there's going to be wind damage with this line, spin ups through the line with some potential strong tornadoes embedded within the line as supercells form within the line. And you can see these, the NAM here is showing supercells developing out ahead here in Alabama as well. But this all consolidates over time into a linear fashion. This line's going to come through. It's a squall line. It's going to really produce an organized damaging wind threat, particularly back in this area, and hopefully that threat abates overnight, although the line still stays strong here on the NAM. You can see it coming through North Carolina tomorrow. This is in the morning, and then it pushes on off down into Florida and off of the Outer Banks off the East Coast as we go through the day and get into the overnight hours. And then some snow on the back side of that, snow showers working through. Up in the Northeast, you're going to see snow with the cold side of the storm. So that's the severe threat. Pay attention, be weather aware today and tonight. Have a place to go if you need to evacuate and take shelter somewhere. Really, in the tornado threat, you don't want to be evacuating. You want to be stationary in the interior room of a house with surrounded by walls and have no windows there. So that is your severe weather outlook for today. Now, what about flooding? We talked about that earlier, and we've been looking at this for a few days. We're in a very active pattern. We've got lots of a lot of these systems coming through, dropping plenty of rain. The moisture content is off the charts in the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley, coming up through the lower Mississippi Valley. You've just got a nice feed. This storm that's taking place is really doing a great job of pumping in rich moisture out of the Gulf. And along that stationary boundary that we saw earlier, we've got rain falling right now, and that rain is training over the same areas. And so the Weather Prediction Center, you don't see a lot of these high risk areas, but they've got a small area here that extends back in from Kentucky to Tennessee, back into Mississippi. In this area here, actually, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the map wrong. I need to put my glasses on probably, but we're looking primarily here at southwestern Kentucky into northwestern Tennessee. Okay, so that's where the primary threat for the highest rain totals are. But this moderate risk, even the slight risk, don't let your guard down here. Any shifting of the main line of focus can shift those totals fairly significantly. And so what kind of totals are we looking at? And we're looking at, let's go to our, this is the good one here. So let's go to this display, and we can see that the Weather Prediction Center here is showing widespread 3+ inch totals in this orange area. So that's what they've looked at all the models, they've done their assessments, they're looking at the moisture content in the atmosphere, they're watching radar trends, and they've established this as kind of the threat area that lines up with the flood watches and warnings that we're seeing. And so this really bright orange area is 5 inches. So several of the folks there could be spots up to 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of rain in some of these areas, particularly in that excessive or that high risk rain area. So be on guard for flash flooding alerts. Don't drive through flooded roadways. As we all know, turn around, don't drown. That's a good saying because it will save your life. Do not drive through a flooded roadway. River flooding is going to be a problem here as well. If we could look at the National Weather Service threat page again, we can see all of those flash flood watches that are up. These lime green colors, of course, are flood advisories and river flood warnings, and then we've got some flash flooding in here. And by the way, I showed this in another video, and I'll link to that in the description below, but take a look here at these red areas. These are flash flood. If you're ever on this map, and I'll put this map in the link too, but you can click right on this map. It's interactive. So I can click on this. If I find the county that I'm in, if I'm up here in North Dakota and I want to know what this is, I can just click here. If I'm up in Maine, I can click here. But I'm going to click on this flash flood warning area here in Tennessee along the Kentucky border. And so this takes me to the local National Weather Service page. You just have to find your county where you are. And hopefully you know your county. If you don't, you should learn where your county is. That's important when it comes to the world of weather. So they issue warnings by county now. They used to have these big polygons that they would use, and now they use counties for that. So know where you live. Good rule of thumb. Free tip from Cold Rain's Weather World. Now, we're going to click on one of these counties here that's in this flash flood warning. You get this little legend here. So we'll click there, and you can dive right in and read the hazard, see where the flash flood warning is in effect for. So flash flood warning in effect through this evening. Flood watch is up through the rest of tonight, and it tells you here in the table heavy rainfall and all of that good stuff. So you can click right in and see all of that. You can also click on the radar image. And the radar image here is overlaid. We could take these overlays off if we want, but take a look here. We'll put this into motion. This is your radar, and as you can see, look at this heavy rain coming through here. This is probably an inch per hour, or even where the red is, more than that. And this rain is just coming in. It's nonstop. It's coming in. It's moving over the same area. So pay attention to the radar today. Pay attention to all of the various alerts that pop up, and be on the lookout for flash flooding. And do not drive over flooded roadways. We want you to subscribe to the channel and watch future videos, okay? So stay with us and don't go through a flooded roadway. So here's one more image that we'll take a look at for the flood threat. You can see this is the HRR, the short range model that we looked at before. I'm going to roll this back, but you can see as this goes through time throughout the afternoon, that line of here we'll get our pen so we can draw. We haven't drawn any today, so this will be fun. So this is your primary area that we're going to be seeing heavy rain. So watch this area in here as we roll this on forward. Okay, so let's do this, and you can see the heavy rain access right through there, and it just for hours it just sort of stays there. It shifts gradually north over time. And then you've got that line of storms that's going to come through and sweep everything off. The low pressure develops and moves. But even after the heavy rain shield migrates up to the north, we've got the line of storms that is going to come through and deliver another round of heavy rains and potentially some stronger winds as we go through time. Okay, now we're going to turn our attention to next week. We've been talking about this for several days on this channel and for more than a week on Twitter about the potential for a major East Coast snowstorm. Now, what's driving this? Well, there's energy that's going to come together in the upper portions of the atmosphere. I'm going to show you that here in a map, series of maps in a second. But today we're going to focus primarily on the European model. Instead of going through all of the models and showing all the various output, for the sake of time, we're going to just kind of dive in and stay focused mainly on the European model and what it's showing. Until we get to the very end of the show, we'll take a look at the GFS ensemble for the longer range pattern. But for the sake of the winter storm, we're going to look at the European. So this is actually the 6Z run from early this morning. And you can see, we're going to show the snow map first, okay? Because everybody likes to see the snow maps. Those are the fun maps to watch. And so as we go forward here and roll this thing forward, we're going to see this is a 72-hour total. I'm showing that instead of the total for the whole entire period because there is snow. As you can see, there's already snow on the ground up here in the Northeast that would contaminate the map. And so we're going to roll this basically 72-hour snow period forward, and you can see that winter storm sort of take shape. See it coming through Kentucky and Tennessee, and then the mountains of North Carolina. It goes on up through the Piedmont of North Carolina, the Northwest Piedmont, into Virginia. And you start to really lay down some nice snow totals from Virginia all the way up into Pennsylvania, Philly. You get on the action, New Jersey, New York, very cold up toward Boston, and it goes on off the coast. So it affects lower New England down to the northern mid-Atlantic. Virginia is the sweet spot. I drew a map on Twitter the other day that really showed this area in here is my as my sort really is my sort of threat area for this storm. And so this is what I've been looking for, something along the lines of this to be the primary area where we see potential for a big impactful winter storm. Depending on how the storm develops and how it tracks will make all the difference between who sees snow, ice, rain, freezing rain, sleet, and the high snow total. So we're going to have to pay very close attention to the details. The devil is always in the details. That's what we always know that in meteorology. And we're not going to talk about a 4-day out snowstorm with any sort of definitive language, because things change all the time. The models are not perfect, and they never will be, at least probably for the next 20 years. So, but they'll get better. There's some artificial intelligence models that are coming along now. They learn, and based on patterns and based on forecasts and all that stuff, they're learning and learning and learning. And so the European AI has one. The GFS has an AI model. And so you'll start to see these. You see these on social media. Some I post them once in a while, but you'll start to see them more in the mainstream as we go forward in time, as they get a little bit better. The European AI actually scores pretty good in terms of its H5 placements and all of that. So this is the European sleet map. So we not only have snow. I focused this on the southeast because this is where most of the sleet's going to fall. So you can see a little bit of sleet here with that on the northern, well, the southern fringes of the snow shield. And as we look at the freezing rain map, now this is where I'm starting to get concerned in North Carolina about the potential for ice. Okay, so the European shows this, and I'm not just showing this because the European shows it. The Canadian shows it. The GFS is showing it a little bit. The ICON is showing it a little bit. So you're starting to see other models pick up. Starting to see some convergence in this area here, North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, toward eastern North Carolina, with ice. Now this model shows just under an inch of ice. Don't focus on the totals yet. We don't know that. We'll have to see how the wedging takes place and how the track of the storm takes place and all that good stuff. So we're going to just note in this area here, let's get our pen back here, growing potential of ice in through here. North of that line, I'm thinking up in this area here, this is where probably the main threat of snow is going to be, on up through here. That's the way it looks today, but always that can change. So there's lots of variability here. So just pay attention over the course of the next couple of days. We'll delete that, get us back on our cursor. And what about temperatures? So what's driving the winter weather? Well, high pressure is going to be building in, preceding the storm, and you can see here rolling this forward in time as the storm starts to take shape. We've got strong wedging coming in down here, down the eastern side of the app. So this is high pressure's funneling this wedging in, this northeasterly flow, dry air filtering in, cold. You can see temperatures in the 20s, and the freezing lines all the way down here into South Carolina. So during the height of the storm, we're looking at temperatures in the 20s. So whatever falls down here in North Carolina, and of course up here it's colder than that. So whatever falls is going to be very cold. It's going to be wintry, it looks like now. So start preparing. If you're in this place, start paying attention to the weather. Start lower south, or the upper southeast and the lower mid-Atlantic up to New England. Pay attention, because we've got a developing situation for next week. Now, taking a look at this map, this is what's contributing to the storm coming together here. So this is our upper level map. We always talk about looking at what's going on upstairs so we can understand what's happening down here at the surface. And this map can be kind of confusing, but all you need to do is really just pay attention to a couple things. You've got piece of energy in the jet stream here. You've got a piece of energy in the jet stream here, okay? You've got this area in the northeast, this big 50-50 low here that's moving off like this, okay? And then you've got another little lobe of energy coming through here. This is going to hopefully help establish a more confluence in this area. You see how these lines kind of come together? These little height lines kind of come together. We talked about this yesterday. That's confluence that locks cold high pressure in at the surface, and I'll show you how that plays out here in a minute. But this little feature here will help to anchor that in a little bit longer as our storm system moves in, and that's what you want to see if you like East Coast winter storms. So putting this into motion, you can see those pieces of energy down here. Look at this one and this one starting to come together. They merge, and you get a low pressure that forms right off the coast, right here, and something like this, and then it works on off and off that way. Okay, that's what the 6Z European model is showing. Some of the other models show similar solutions, so we're starting to see some convergence around this. What did last night's model look like? Here, let's take a look, because this is a little bit different. Let's see, we'll go back here. So we'll change the time right here on the fly and look at last night's European. Okay, so this is the 0Z run. You've got this piece of energy here. You've got this other one coming in. Now look what it does. It really wraps this thing up and just nukes the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. I mean, we're talking, over a foot, 15 inches of snow all the way up to the Northeast. And so there are subtle differences in how these two pieces of energy merge, when they merge, how strong they are when they merge. All of that is going to play into the type of system that we see, the type of precipitation that falls, and how much and where. So no model has this perfect yet, but we're in the window where we can start looking at some of these deterministic models. The ensembles have increased their snow amounts pretty steadily over the last couple of cycles. And so we'll watch and see if that trend continues. And so here's how it unfolds at the surface. Got this big 1050 high 3. This is a big high pressure. This is pretty anomalous. And so you get these big high pressures coming in. They want to extend this way, and you can actually see that playing out later. Let's put the map into motion. You see how the footprint of these little isobars here they sort of nose on in to this area here. Look at that, kind of nosing in like this. That's a function of the confluence that we saw up here. It's helping to pull this way and lock it in. And so you're going to see that translate out over time. The storm system is beginning to take shape. You want the storm to be south of you if you really like winter weather. And so you see this low kind of taking shape over here. High pressure, the core of it drops here, but you've got, it's not shown here, but you've got an extension of it feeding into the Northeast. And you can see that reflected here down the eastern slopes of the Alps with this cold air feed. You've got snow and sleet and freezing rain breaking out in the Carolinas. This goes on off. This low, it wants to track the low slightly inland, and so that's why we've got more ice than snow in the Carolinas. And then that goes off the coast. It strengthens to 999 millibars. You've got some heavy snow falling up here in Pennsylvania, Philly, up into New Jersey and New York, and so that just goes on off. So the 0Z kind of bombed everybody pretty good, but we'll see. A lot of options are on the table. My least favorite option right now is a complete miss and out to sea in a weak wave. I think we're going to see some interaction and some phasing, and I think for some people this is going to be a memorable event. And as we can see in prior to the storm, the 850 millibar temperature anomaly map from the European. Very cold air coming in. We've been talking about this cold air. You guys bundle up out here because it's going to get into the single digits and then below zero at times. And so this 850 anomaly, this is just showing above and below normal temperatures at 5,000 feet. And so that spreads out over time. It bleeds into the south. It feeds into the storm. And like I said earlier on another video, you want to show this map because it gives you a good idea of how the temperature is going to play out at the surface as well. Where it's cold and blue, it's cold at the surface. Where it's warm, it's going to be warmer than normal at the surface. It doesn't tell you anything about the temperature specifically, except that the magnitude of it below or above normal. If you want to see the temperatures at the surface, we can do that. They kind of bounce around as you get day and night, so it's a little aggravating, but we'll put this into motion too. You can see that cold air coming in, minus 25 up here in Montana. Woo, it's cold. Bundle up, minus 9, minus 7, minus 4. You got just below zero everywhere. So this is really bitterly cold air for this time of year. And you can see how that funnels into the east and sets up and just moves on through over time. So after the storm, it's going to be very, very cold. So that's what you've got. Now, longer range, no need to spend a lot of time on that today. We'll get into that later on, but there's some mixed signals. We've been talking about the Pacific jet kind of getting its act together and translating into the western part of the country. That would bring stormy conditions in, but it also flood the continent with mild air. So the European ensemble mean sort of shows that. as we go out over time. The 0Z run from last night, you have this nice trough in the east, but look out here. Signal for kind of increasing jet activity and a jet extension that works into the United States. And you can see that even though the heights are kind of average here, this is still going to be mild Pacific air. Not going to have any winter storm threats if this plays out. So we'll have to see. The GFS has a little bit of a different story. It still looks like it's trying to do the same thing, but watch what happens. You got the big trough in the east, ridge out west. We're rolling this forward in time. This sort of retrogrades a little bit, and you still have a signal for a ridge here. And so air is going to come in over top of that ridge and feed into the pattern. So still cold air is going to be available up here. So no matter what happens here, if it's not a stagnant pattern, we kind of get, maybe we get a break for a couple of days with mild air, and then this retrogrades back like the GFS is showing, and you get a little bit more in the way of cold air into March. Okay, so that's where we are. So the last thing we're going to take a look at is the answer to our trivia question. Now, what was our question? Let's go back to our question. What is the term for a rapidly intensifying tropical cyclone? And the answer is bombogenesis. Bombogenesis takes place when a cyclone strengthens rapidly over the course of 12 to 24 hours. And you'll see this happen with hurricanes quite frequently, where it'll be, 999 millibars, and then all of a sudden it's 975 millibars over the course of 12 hours or something like that. So you get these rapid pressure drops, the wind field comes up, and you call that bombogenesis in meteorological terms. And that sound means we're out of time. So with that, this is Cold Rain reminding you that if you did not like the weather that you saw today, there's always a better model out there somewhere that shows the weather that you want. So it's your job to go and find it. Take care, everybody. Have a nice day. Be safe.